next conference speaker is going to come from the city of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, directly from Canada, I hope. And easy on.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here, Sam, today. My name is Anthony van der Ven. I'm Dutch, but I could be Belgian, living in Brussels since 30 years. And I represent Brainport, Eindhoven. On the one hand, I represent the city of Eindhoven, and on the other hand, the Brainport organization, the Brainport Foundation, and the development agency, and therefore businesses, knowledge centers, and the city alike. I've been here for 30 years, so more familiar with Brussels than Eindhoven almost. Okay, maybe I should say something about about what Brainport is and its mission. So Brainport is a regional development agency which is implementing the innovation ecosystem strategy for the region. It's not only for the city of Eindhoven, but the wider region around this. The goal of Brainport Eindhoven is like any self-respecting development agency to create growth, employment for the region. But I think in Brainport Eindhoven, we do this a little bit differently than in other parts of the world, in the sense that we base ourselves on 4 different elements. On the one hand, collaboration. The Brainport, the foundation, and the development agency, we work on the ecosystem as a whole. So not necessarily particularly for individual companies, but we take care of, or we stimulate the cooperation within the ecosystem and thereby create agile companies that work today, that turn a profit today, but are also flexible enough, agile enough to do the same thing in the future. So we're talking about future-proof business, if you like. We're very strongly believers in the principles of open innovation, whereby companies, knowledge sector, and the public sector work together intensively in the development of knowledge, in the and to be able individually to manufacture and turn a profit when it's about companies. And more, if you follow European policy a little bit, you see that there is a lot of attention these days to, on the one hand, innovation, but not just innovation that has a societal relevance. And when we started Brainport almost 30 years ago, it was really about facing an economic downturn and turning this around into economic growth again. So it's really focusing on the business and the knowledge, marrying those, and thereby creating innovation and bringing that to the market. These days, we see that we're moving on from this triple helix, this cooperation between business, knowledge centers, and the public sector, to quadruple helix, and that's this societal element, which is becoming more and more important. Innovation is relevant when you can do something become relevant for society. We're looking at problems that all of us are facing. I've heard a lot about it in the news about Canada this summer again. Climate change, it's hitting us all. What are we going to do about it? Can we put innovation and ultimately manufacturing and product development and solutions to the greater use of these societal challenges that we have? At the end of the day, of course, it's about making a profit, and that's what we're working towards.
So let's try again with Sushanta in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Sushanta, do you hear me? So go ahead with your presentation, or you've got 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. I know it's afternoon there at Brussels. Sorry I couldn't be with you all. So I'm Sushanta Mitra. I'm a professor in Department of Mechanical and Mechatronics Engineering at University of Waterloo in Canada, as well as the founder and CEO of SLE Enterprises BV, Dutch BV in Eindhoven. And I'm happy to be here with our other co-panelists and moderators. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushanta. So we hear you well. I hope you hear me well as well. I'll try to make it loud. You have the questions with you, though. I ask for the first questions. Sushanta, here's to you. Please explain your background, ongoing projects, and research environments at University of Waterloo.
Yeah, thanks for this question. So I think University of Waterloo, the faculty members, the students in our DNA, entrepreneurship is inbuilt. Innovation and entrepreneurship is part of it. So when we do carry out fundamental research at the same time, we are able to translate that research in from our lab to connecting with end users, be it with community partners, be it translating into a startup venture like SLE that we did, or trying to create a positive impact, particularly in the context of the Waterloo Institute for Nanotechnology, for which I serve as the executive director of the institute. Is Canada's largest nanotechnology institute. We are very much committed to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So what we are doing, we are not only creating economic impact for all Canadians, but at the same time, we are creating societal impact by mapping our research with UN SDGs. Thank you.
So here you have the background of on one part of the ocean in Europe, in the Netherlands, the background on how to do startups and all the qualities that entrepreneurs are looking for in order to start a business out of the Netherlands and for Europe. And on the other part of the ocean in Canada, you have a University of Waterloo. It's Sushanta who's promoting his research and ending up into a startup as well, and into partnership with the Netherlands in that matter. For that example, very example, it could be anywhere else in Europe, but we have that chance to test to have an example of a real nice partnership between Europe and Canada with the Netherlands and Eindhoven. So you've talked about the mission of the Waterloo Institute for Nanotechnology, Sushanta, but what are the ties with the European counterparts, if you can explain that to us?
Very good. Thank you. So I guess almost like 10 years back, the region of Brainport region, Eindhoven, visited city of Waterloo because they felt there is a strong knowledge corridor exists between Waterloo, Toronto corridor, which is very much in the software, soft tech part, whereas Eindhoven is very much into deep tech. So those discussions then came into some sort of I will say, in terms of action plan by creating an MOU between Waterloo Institute for Nanotechnology at the University of Waterloo with Brainport Eindhoven, with High-Tech Excel and Photon Delta. So we realized that in a consortium approach, we would able to maximize the potential the two regions have, Waterloo in the North America and the Brainport region in Netherlands. And I think that was really important for creating those startup creation at both parts of the world. We are not only connected with Brainport, we have a very strong connection with University of Twente, Mesa Plus, which is at Enschede region, also with the TU Eindhoven, AMALF, that's in the Amsterdam Research Park, and many other partners. We are still continuing growing our relationships with Netherlands. In Germany, similarly, we have a significant relationship with research institutes in Germany, particularly in the nanomaterial side. So we see that Netherlands particularly is our gateway to European Union, as well as trying to see how our deep tech startups and the research that we do can have access to European market and beyond. So we see as for us, so Europe Union is a particularly important sector in terms of a growth strategy as well as knowledge mobilization processes.
Thank you, Sushanta. I'm going back to you, Anthony. I'm going to give you the mic. We're going to share the mic as there's no more batteries. What is the mission? You've talked about it, but what is the real mission of the Eindhoven Brainport and ties with Canada, and not only with the Sushanta, but other parts of Canada, other universities, or anybody else?
Yeah, the mission I explained already a little bit. Huh? So basically, at the end of the day, it's about creating growth for the region. I think adding to what Sushanta was already saying, I recall vaguely in a previous era that my then mayor, Rob van Gijzel, he was on a visit to Waterloo at the time, on a mission. And he explained at the time how our two regions, Waterloo and Brainport, are quite similar. There's a lot of differences, obviously, but the similarities were very much to be found in a region which is full of high-tech SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, but also known for one or two big players. In Waterloo at the time, it was BlackBerry, and we have, of course, Philips. And as well, we were facing a downturn in manufacturing jobs. And we had to do something about that. Now, it was maybe not exactly at the same time, but we did face that same issue, challenge, if you like, that manufacturing jobs went down, and we needed to create a favorable environment for high-tech employment. So we needed to create this environment where the high-tech industries, knowledge and new businesses could grow. And of course, when you talk about our ties with Canada, on the one hand, I say we're picky in the regions we want to dance with, if you like, in Eindhoven. Maybe a bit arrogant in the sense that, you know, we've got a thing or two to teach, but most importantly, I think what we are good at in Brainport is recognizing in others what they're good at, acknowledging that they're good at something that we can learn from, and at the same time, and that was what I think, but maybe you could add to that, Sushanta, recognizing that you're working with not just nice Canadians, pleasant people to work with, but people you can trust and that you can create win-win situations with. Waterloo University, the region of Waterloo was of course an interesting one because of what I just described, the environment, the situation, the ecosystem, in particular the university, the technology themes, areas that you already mentioned, nanotech and the MOU between Brainport and the Waterloo Institute of Nanotech is of course a good example of that. It embodies the complementarity, if you like, of technologies. It's not just nanotech, because nanotech makes a bridge to quantum computing as well as photonics. Philips, of course, traditionally started as a light bulb company, but it's moved on very much into the photonics area, and there is a whole ecosystem around that. And it's this complementarity that works very well. And I'd like to mention one eye-catcher, which sort of, I don't want to say it was the trigger, but Communitech was really something that at the time in Brainport was an eye-opener. The way Communitech in Waterloo supported startups. And that's a good example how you look at areas regions you want to dance with, if I can use that terminology. And you see, okay, you've got something that I like to learn from, and I can give you something in return, and thereby we both win.
No, that's quite impressive, actually. And I completely agree with the similarities between, I would say, between the Netherlands and the province of Ontario. I see similarities in both territories. So it makes sense between Eindhoven and Waterloo. Let me get back to another question now. How the Netherlands is a strategic entry point for the European Union. So promoting the Netherlands as an entry point. We've talked earlier in other panels as an entry point for Europeans into Quebec, Montreal, or even Toronto, going eastern part of North America, maybe Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, to the western part of North America. How Netherlands could be a really nice entry point for Canadians into Europe.
In fact, I should thank you, Sushanta, because you have answered this question already partly for me by mentioning this MOU and by mentioning in particular Photon Delta and what was it called? High-Tech Excel. This MOU is an MOU led by WIN and Brainport, so you would think it's focused on these two partners, but in fact by including other partners from the Netherlands, so Photon Delta, for example, is not particularly geared to or based in Brainport or focused on Brainport. It's focused on it has a much broader audience. And by taking these into your MOU, what you're effectively doing is broadening the scope and thereby allowing the functionality as a gateway, at least in the Netherlands, but I would think also broader to Europe. I should say about that Brainport as such is very active in Europe with an office in Brussels, looking for partnerships continuously. So in fact, hooking up with Brainport from the Canadian perspective allows you to make use of that knowledge. And I think it's part of this win-win, whereby as long as you can trust each other and you're prepared to share, then this could indeed be a gateway to elsewhere.
Very good indeed. You use the word trust. That's what we all thinking of, building that trust between two individuals. That's what we're looking at in order to do business afterwards. So that's a very important keyword indeed. Sushanta, now back to you. I think this question is to you, absolutely. How do you compare Canada to other business ecosystem in the world in order to launch a startup?
So I think what we have done over the years, as mentioned, is we have an ecosystem in Waterloo. Like community is a community partner within the University of Waterloo. We have Velocity Science, Velocity Garage. So it tries to create a continuum, so to speak, all the way from undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty member into the community. So I think we have that continuum process. But I must emphasize that our ecosystem is more tailored towards, I will say, fintech or software, because that's where has been the traditional strength at Waterloo in this region, particularly the Waterloo, Kitchener, Waterloo, Toronto corridor that we call the knowledge corridor, so to speak. So I think what excites us in this partnership with Brainport is we see a complementarity in terms of having access to deep tech clusters, the startups, the ecosystem there, the OEMs are critical for our startups. So there is a significant amount of complementarity that we see between our ecosystem vis-a-vis that we see in the Brainport region. So I think there is also a lot of opportunity for each other to learn from this process, like the Brainport Eindhoven, the various programs like BOM and High-Tech Excel. There are venture journey programs and so forth for deep tech startups. So I see there is a huge opportunity for us to learn from each other. Did I answer your question, or was it anything else I'm missing here?
I think you got it pretty well, actually. And but in order to complete what you're saying, if you can tell, the start of the story, how did the partnership between the University of Waterloo and the Netherlands happen? I know we've been talking a little bit, but if we can go a little bit further with the entrepreneur's point of view, it could be for the audience an experience to be shared from Europe to Canada or Canada to Europe. So your take on that?
Thank you so much. So way the process works is Brainport Eindhoven has a very structured approach in terms of onboarding startups from Canada. Like in this case, SLE did that process. So we work with Brainport business development person, and we put together a package in terms of our business plan, what is a typical, as you can imagine, any startups, you have to provide the business case, why it makes sense to be in Europe. In this case, for SLE, it was important because we review our product removes use of microplastics. So this was a big regulations in EU, so it matches quite well for us to be in EU, for example. And then we do a submission to IND, that's Dutch government, where Brainport works with us, and then finally we get an approval to set up this what we call under the startup visa process. So you set that entity. Of course, in Canada, it's much easier. From my home, I can do incorporation. It's it's easy for federal incorporation. However, for a Dutch BV, it's a long process, particularly when we have stakeholders, the equity shareholders who are across the ocean, so to speak. So we have to go through some of the paperwork, the processes through a notary and so forth. But I think overall, it is, the process is pretty well laid out, and we so far has a very seamless journey, so to speak, having the startup, and then Brainport helped us also to acquire an office space in TU Eindhoven campus, because TU Eindhoven campus, they have alpha building, so there's a lot of the startups are already, these young so-called startups are there, so that helps to understand from each other, know what are the pain points, so to speak. So I think that journey is quite exciting, and Brainport has been instrumental in helping us through that process.
Technical here, the lag that we're experiencing is due to moving with Bluetooth. If you can stand still, more or less, and hear from that side of the ocean, where we're going to hear you really well. But it's going pretty well. And your side of the story, Anthony, about that partnership from the beginning, if we go deeper, and what was the reason and the relevance of that partnership?
Yeah, I already mentioned this mission in 2014, so I'm not going to go back to that one. Yes, it is open, isn't it? Yes. I think it also boils down a lot to people. I recall that I wasn't personally there, but Brainport and Waterloo met each other in the ICF, the Intelligent Communities Forum, where Waterloo was voted smartest region of the world in 2007, I think. Intelligent Communities Forum. It's a global network. It takes place every year. It's a network. And you should know, because Waterloo won smartest region in the world in 2007, and I was going to congratulate you with that. And Eindhoven won that same title in 2011, a couple of years later, so we were slower off the mark. But the important thing of that is that we met in this forum, in this network, if you like, which is a growing network, because everybody wants to be smartest, of course. There's no point in being the dumbest. So this is attractive, and you meet people. The speaker before us was expressing his gratitude to be able to see faces again, at least part of the faces then, but that's a good start. And indeed, it is important, because if we see each other, we meet each other, we remember. And I think that is how, apart from all the technology complementarities and nano and quantum and photonics and all that sort of interesting stuff, it's first and foremost, you need to have the arena, the opportunity to drink a glass of wine or a glass of beer together. A wonderful Canadian wine, thank you very much for that, by the way, over lunch. Yeah, you missed that, Sushanta. And connect. And I think it's an important point to make, this importance of networking, of seeing each other, having a chat, and moving beyond the wife and children and how are they, etc. But talking about, what makes your region tick? What do you need? What can I offer? And so on and so forth. And from that, things grow.
So I think what Anthony mentioned is really something very important. I want to underscore that people connection here. And in Eindhoven region, there are a number of these opportunities. For example, they have this pitch drinks and demos at the innovation space, and that's run through Holland Innovate and other partners. And that's another excellent place where myself and others were able to connect with a number of ecosystem players and so forth. And what I find about quite amazing about the Dutch ecosystem and the way they operate is they're always open to connect you with others. And I think that's very important for a business, that they are always open and eager to open their own network to you. And I think that not always happen in most of the part of the world I have been traveling. So I think this is something quite unique about the Dutch ecosystem. And I think that's something we are very fortunate to have able to capitalize on that aspect as well. So thanks, Antonio, for mentioning this.
Thank you. Being an entrepreneur myself, I do completely agree with you. Human connection, human relationship first is really, really important in order to start things off and to have projects and to go further, and then technology can come in. But it's all about a human relationship, and then to know each other and to build that trust. Very important. Now, I think it's very interesting. We've been, talking about broader environment in Canada, Netherlands, Europe, Waterloo, Eindhoven. Now, let's get into the company itself, SLE Enterprises, BV. Tell me about it. It's a novel encapsulation technology for the environment and else. Explain that to us. I think it's really relevant, and there's a future for that, and it's very compliant with the environmental objectives in Canada and in Europe, maybe starting with you, Sushanta.
Thank you. So if you look at way the microplastics are used in consumer products, be it shampoo, be it in foods, be it pharmaceuticals and so forth, an easy example to tell you, like there's so many microbits, these are microplastics that often goes drain into our through the environment and to the wastewater and so forth. So these microplastics has a big impact. So we thought about, can we look at the technology of encapsulating cargoes, which is the core, so to speak, which is the valuable material that an industry would like to do without using a microplastic. So we came up with this technology called liquid encapsulation. So we do everything in the liquid system. So we don't need a solid material to encapsulate valuable cargo. So that's the, our core technology. It has been already PCT and US patent already in the process. So it's going through different PCT filing at different European regions as well. So this is quite exciting and the core of it. And why this is important, because if you look at EU regulations of removing microplastics is becoming a mandate in 2022 and beyond. So we see our SLE machines that are able to do high throughput scalable encapsulation will really fit this kind of market. And we look at the four key vertical areas. One is food, beverage, confectionaries. The second is nutraceuticals like omega-3 tablets and so forth. The third is on cosmetics. And the fourth long-term vision is also on pharmaceuticals, particularly in terms of oral delivery of targeted drug molecules and so forth.
What about you, Anthony? Do you have something to tell us about the technology or the enterprise itself, or no? Yeah. From your point of view, welcoming that technology, that company in Eindhoven by what they're doing, they try to do it to cover the market, European market. What's your take on that?
Unfortunately, I'm a political scientist, so when it gets any more technical than this, then I'm lost. But I can make a point about it's again about the cooperation, but this time about how. I'll make it very practical. At the moment in Eindhoven region. We are establishing in the public sector, so the city of Eindhoven and the city of Helmond, which Sushanta, you will know because it's right next to Eindhoven. We're working together to achieve, or on an ambition, to be climate neutral by 2030. That's 8 years from now. This is impossible, but we're going to try and do it anyway. But the point there is, of course, as a city, there's absolutely no way. We don't have the technology, the whereabouts, the finances to do so. But as a city, we've now managed to gain the support of Brainport, so the development agency and the foundation above that, and the big OEMs and a number of SMEs, because of course there's a lot happening in energy technology in the broadest sense of the word, but also digitalization, mobility solutions, air quality monitoring tools, etc., etc., etc. We have no idea, and we need to forge this partnership. The partnership between, on the one hand, companies like Sushanta's company, which unfortunately I have a small grasp of what exactly it's doing, but of course, that's not my job either. But what I do need is, I need him to be able to tell me, listen, Anthony, you've got a problem, which is a very big, complex problem, addressing the climate challenge in an urban environment. He can be part of the solution, but the only way we can do this is copy what I earlier told you about this networking, this cooperation between the triple helix, to actually move that to a societal quadruple, or some people even say, how do you say, quintuple, I guess, helix, whereby you really start looking at taking a responsibility as business, knowledge sector, public authority, and the populace for the challenges that are facing you. And so it's making this link between the technical solutions, like the ones you are talking about earlier, the combination of them, coming back to this thing that I mentioned earlier, open innovation. What Sushanta has developed and continues to develop may benefit from the processes of development and research that are taking place, maybe in the university campus in Eindhoven, maybe on the high-tech campus where there are hundreds of small businesses in a variety of technical fields, or maybe somewhere in Waterloo, I don't know, or Quebec, and it's the challenge to pull that together and thereby creating, well, in our case then, a better city. So I talked about all of that without getting into the technical parts of it.
No, which is good, because being a startup, it's not only in that case about innovation, it's about marketing this innovation, and this is a big part of the success. You can have a great ideas, but if it's not marketed well, it will be the end of it, actually. So partnership, that's where it's important. Market coverage is important, and the marketing of the products to make it understandable, easy to understand for everybody, including and mostly your partners, and then further potential clients is important. You have something to say more. So you have thoughts on that.
I'm sorry to steal the microphone again, because marketing is one hand, but creating markets is another thing. You know, I'm sure it's the same in Canada, but in Europe, the biggest spenders is the public sector. National, federal, in some countries, national, regional and local government are huge spenders. And they are therefore also able to create markets. Things like innovative procurement or pre-competitive procurement are instruments that are not used to their fullest extent, not by far used to their fullest extent. And I think, you know, this is also a part whereby if you have these billions, these really billions of euros in Europe, I can't give you a figure for Canada, but I'm sure it's also a lot of money, that you could to a much greater extent use to achieve societal challenges, to achieve progress on those issues that matter. I mentioned climate change, but talk about the digital divide, for example, digital transition, the demographic changes that we have, and all the health related challenges that we're facing there. Industry, SMEs, in innovative companies, may have a lot of solutions available, or can be pushed, maybe pushed is not a nice word in this sense, but can be pushed or driven to develop these solutions if they know that there will be a market for them. And then you don't even have to market, because if you know that governments will need certain solutions, products, options, then of course you're triggered to work on that and to develop these solutions.
I can hold myself, but to complete that, as Bertrand Piccard told, that there's maybe 1,000 technology or innovation available out there. We simply have to use it in order to reach our goals. So the technology is there, and the money is there as well. Investment is there. The willingness, I think, is there as well. Now, talking about markets, talking about markets is talking about sales. You want to be a profitable company. It's we cannot go around that. It's the ultimate objective behind a company is to be profitable. And so, what are the sales forecast, market coverage, sector coverage, etc.? Some examples. What kind of clients do you have right now or foresee in the next year or the 2 years to come? Sushanta.
Thanks for this question, and I should mention that the SLE is also been incorporated inside the now in High-Tech Excel. So we will be functioning through High-Tech Campus, and I think our partnership now with High-Tech Excel will also provide us the segue in terms of really going into the customers, so to speak, in those four key verticals that we talked about. And one is the food, beverages, and confectionery. The second is nutraceutical. The third is cosmetics, and the fourth is pharmaceutical. And through this process that we are within High-Tech Excel, is that we will able to identify the beachhead market, so to speak, for our technology. And I think with that identification of the beachhead market, it will help us to create a growth curve, so to speak, beyond those initial engagements that we have with those four sectors, the customers of the four sectors, and particularly trying to create a letter of interest and intent, so to speak, for our product with some of the key players in the Brainport region. So I see there is a tremendous opportunity here for SLE for the growth. And also, what other part I should mention that this is quite interesting that things like High-Tech Excel, Brainport, Eindhoven, they fully understand the deep tech uh, return on investment doesn't happen just tomorrow. It is a long process. And I think that patience in the ecosystem is very critical for the growth of a startup, which is like a deep tech startup like SLE, which tries to create a new product, new innovation in a very traditional sector like encapsulation. So all in all, I see the next few years will be a tremendous growth potential for SLE. Thank you.
Continuing with that, the critical time for a startup to really start things off is 5 years usually. So what are the plans for the after 5 years? You're going to go through those 5 years with the environment you just described, but what are the plans, especially for Europe, by example, in market coverage, sector coverage, maybe other partnerships? I'll let you go on that.
What I think a few things what we are looking at, if you look at SLE at the core, we have the technology and we want to make it more of a fabless manufacturing. So a company. So we don't really manufacture the equipment. So that's another beauty of the ecosystem. There are OEMs where we are partnering with OEMs in the Eindhoven who will actually fabricate the machines for us, and then those will be actually be it at different customers' locations, not only within the Netherlands but beyond in Europe. So, and then after the what I see the next 5 years, after beyond the next 5 years, is our penetration within the different European regions as well as in North America. Because if you look at always North America is lagging some 5 to 7 years in terms of environmental regulations. So we believe that similar microplastic bans and so forth will come up in a big way in North America as well. So I think what SLE and this in collaboration helps us with Brainport and High-Tech Excel, we are ahead of the curve. So moment these kind of policy changes happen in North America, we will be well positioned to sell our equipment in the North American market and beyond. So I think this is where the excitement I see of, in next 5 years and beyond.
Very good. Thank you very much. We're already at the Q&A section of the panel, and I'd really like to have questions from the audience, if it's possible. If you have questions as an entrepreneur, how to launch or do a startup in Europe, in Canada, do you have any questions? Don't hesitate, raise your hand, and we'll give you the mic.
Yeah, thanks, very interesting. I just wanted to ask you a question. The European Union has all sorts of programs for research and innovation, the European Innovation Council, the European Research Council, all the funds for research as well. And these are excellent fora for meeting young, dynamic, new researchers and innovators. And I'm wondering if either of you have used those, or if you recommend those to others to do these, because these are open to the whole world, and many startups are working in them.
Obviously, I'm not working for the European Commission, unfortunately, so I cannot open up the research programs for everybody. It's not my job. But there is opportunity within, for example, Horizon Europe, or particularly Horizon Europe and related programs for other or third countries, we call them then in Europe. I apologize for that. But third countries to participate. And in fact, Eindhoven is Brainport, but also the city of Eindhoven and the University of Eindhoven are very active in these programs. And we regularly ask third parties, third countries, universities or others to participate in such programs, and it is possible. There is in principle not a problem. The regulations are different per country. I must admit that I don't exactly know on the top of my head what the exact rules and regulations are for Canadians to participate. At times it has to do with the national government contributing for the Canadian partner in a project. Sometimes the government has a sort of an agreement with the European Commission. Like for example, the Swiss in the last program had that, so they could just participate. This is something that one needs to research a bit, but it's definitely possible, and it's often welcomed. I know that in our case, we often work with partners from all over the world. I mean, this goes from Brazil to Singapore to North America in the broadest sense of the word. And yes, it is a positive thing, and we should do more of it, absolutely. But you know how national governments are when it comes to spending their money. In fact, it's ours, but their money beyond their borders. That's often a long negotiation process.
Sushanta, go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
There is a program we call Eureka Global Stars program. So that's another excellent way where you bring 3 countries together. Like recently I was involved in that, where Taiwan, Netherlands, as well as Canada, where we are trying to create a consortium approach, and that I think this Global Star program is excellent for SMEs like SLE and others to partner with established research entities and seek new partnership in something which could open up new doors. In this case, we are looking at Taiwan as a fab manufacturing partnership. So there are definitely excellent program in that aspect, bringing different countries together.
Thank you very much, Sushanta, from University of Waterloo, Ontario. It was a pleasure to have you virtually. Next time is going to be on site, I'm sure. Good luck for future projects. And let's jump, and thank you as well, Anthony, for your inputs. And we'll jump into the next panel with Melina as a moderator.